Welcome to Underdog Rising with your host, Wade Bozane, where we ignite your journey from humble beginnings to greatness through inspiring tales of top executives and entrepreneurs. In this episode of Underdog Rising, we're joined by Andrew Dobby, founder and CEO of MadeBrave, a multi-million-pound creative agency started with just £1,000 in his bank account when his son was 2 weeks old. Today, MadeBrave partners with brands like Nestle, Medtronic, and KPMG and has been named Agency of the Year by Marketing Society Scotland. Andrew's journey from studying multimedia systems to making father-son TikToks that caught Will Smith's attention exemplifies how purpose-driven culture fuels exceptional work. Under his leadership, MadeBrave has also earned a spot on the Sunday Times 100 Best Companies to Work For. So hear how Andrew blends creativity, courage, and authenticity to build a thriving global brand. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me so much. Yeah, delighted to be here.
Could you walk us through just a summary of your career so people can better understand sort of where you started to where you are today?
Sure, absolutely. I think if it helps, at school, as I say, I was always a creative guy. So I was either in art class, and I was always very creative, or I was in the music department. I played in bands and I played guitar. So I was always kind of in that place. And I was also the kid at school that made the fake IDs for people to get into the pub when they were young, right? So I had the first scanner and the first digital camera, and I was also a little bit of entrepreneurialism there, I think, earlier on. But I'd never ever heard the word entrepreneur, and I can't spell the word, right? It was just never in my vernacular. I had a single parent. My mum, she was a nurse, and she worked night shift, and my mum and dad had divorced when I was like 7 years old. So she was working night shift, and I just didn't know entrepreneurs or people that ran businesses. So that was never in my head. And I moved, I'm in Scotland, if you can't tell by the accent. And I came from a little village, and I moved to Glasgow, which is the biggest city in Scotland, when I was 18 years old. And I came to study multimedia design and production. And really, that was when the internet was forming or figuring itself out, right? It was, so I'm 43 now. That was when I was 18. And, CSS, for building websites wasn't even a thing yet. People would still build websites and HTML without CSS, and so I studied one of these courses that was a little bit of like graphic design, video production, photography, web development. It touches loads of stuff to see kind of what you're good at. And very quickly, I realized I was good at the creative side. I wasn't good at the sort of development stuff. My brain just doesn't work in that kind of structured way. And that sent me off on a path. And when I left university, I really partied a lot through university and didn't do much university. I landed a job with the ex-Scotland football captain, and that's soccer for. He was a guy called Paul McStay, a really lovely guy. He had just finished playing professional football. He'd been the captain of the Scotland football team, and Celtic, which is like one of the two biggest teams in Scotland. And I started working for him. It was his company. There was three of us and someone left, and it was just me and him in this room. And I don't know anything really about football or soccer, but we got on really well. And I worked with Paul for 8 years in this kind of small company. And there was kind of sort of max 8 or 10 people at any one time at the growth of the company. And I suppose I was designing stuff. I was building websites. I was doing a bit of everything. And then there's usually a moment in your life where something changes dramatically. And, my changing moment or defining moment was my wife was pregnant with my son, Finn. And when he was 2 weeks old, I was sort of realizing, shit, I'm not going to have enough money. I wasn't, it wasn't that I wasn't getting paid well. It was just a small company. And I thought, I'm going to need some more money because my wife's going to be stopping work. I'm going to have nappies, diapers to pay for, childcare. And so when my son was 2 weeks old and I literally had £1,000 in my bank, I thought, what a really good time to leave your job and start a business. And so naivety is a wonderful thing because I don't quite think I knew what was coming ahead of me. And I think probably that's what made it succeed, right? Because I went out and for anyone that's had kids, right, this story becomes much more relevant once you've had young children, because they're a lot of work. And I just set off to be a freelance graphic designer. I did baby photography. I did wedding photography. I did anything I could. I was like, I'm going to make some money. And that was really my driver, was money driven. I need to make more money than I have just now. And when I got out into the world, I already knew how to design. I had my craft, if you imagine, right? So I'd learned some skills that have got a value to give in the world. And that's a really important thing, is to figure out something sort of transaction you have. But I realized very quickly I quite enjoyed the business side of it. I enjoyed pitching, talking to people. And so within a few months, I'd been sharing with a few people. My friend had given me a space in his office, and I got so busy that I was like, shit, I need to figure something out. And there was a guy that shared an office with me, and he wasn't enjoying running a business. He'd been doing that for 10 years and was a little bit more, I'm not enjoying the business side of it. And I said, well, why don't you work for me? Because I'm getting busy. You're a better designer than me, but and I'll take over doing the business stuff. And he kind of said to me, Andrew, I've got a family. I need minimum £30,000, to survive. And I was like, shit, I don't have £30,000. But then someone told me something that changed this trajectory. And this is a good insight, because when you're growing a business or trying to grow a business, the biggest stumbling block for a lot of people is making that first hire. And I realized, well, I don't need £30,000, because £30,000 broken down into months is about £2,500 a month. And in the UK, we've got a probation period. So you've got 3 months where you can get, within that 3 months, you can call it quits and give the person a week's notice. And that's on either side, right? So it's kind of, I don't know how that works where you are, Wade, but that's kind of how it works for me. And so I realized, well, I don't need £30,000. I need £7,500. And I think at this time I'd squirreled away about £8,000 or £10,000 in the bank. So I said to him, right, okay, let's try and make this happen. And if not, let's call it quits at 3 months. And I was just upfront about that. And I set off and I went, right, well, I've got 1 month now and I need to make more than £2,500 to cover his and cover mine. That was the first target. And then I did it and did it and did it. And by the end of the first year, I had 6 people in my team full time, and I hadn't borrowed a penny from the bank. And I'd just done the exact same thing over and over and over. And then by the end of year 2, I had 16 people in the team, and I hadn't borrowed any money. I hadn't taken investment. I hadn't done any of that stuff. And I still couldn't read a balance sheet. I still didn't know what a profit and loss was. And so you don't worry about that stuff. If you're thinking about starting a business, it comes and people teach you and you'll figure it out. And if I can figure it out, anyone can figure it out. And then, from there, my agency, just grew and grew and grew. And the brands that we started working with got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I've been up at 70 odd people. I'm now down at 30 odd people. And I'm at, we're at a place where we've got a good solid business. We've got good big clients. And I've been around now in business for 13 years. And a lot of businesses fail in the first year. Loads fail in years 2 and 3, and so I'm really proud that we've made it to 13. It's a thing in itself. But yeah, that gives you, and I suppose now for anyone interested, what does my business actually do? Because I've not said that. So ultimately, we're a brand and creative agency, and we use the power of creativity to solve business problems. So, we go in and we hear what people are doing. We figure out creatively, how can you use that to inspire people? How can you inspire the company? How can you create a brand that people are proud of? And then how can you use that to build an army to market a brand or a product?
One thing I wanted to touch on and ask is, we mentioned you founded MadeBrave with just £1,000 in your pocket or bank, basically, when your son was like just 2 weeks old. Like, could you walk us through your mindset at that moment, right? I know you briefly touched on it, but like, what ultimately gave you that courage to take the leap? Was it just, I need more funds and I have to go out and start something? Or was there a little bit of something else that kind of just made you take that leap from, because a lot of folks will stay in that comfortable zone instead of actually stepping out?
I'm going to answer that, but I'm going to tell you a very funny story, right? Because See, when you say that the £1,000 part, I was in Miami, I think it was last year or the year before, and to tell my story on stage, I was asked to come up and tell and speak to people. And this guy came up to me after it, and he obviously hadn't quite caught what I said with my Scottish accent. He said, Andrew, I'm so inspired. You were £1,000 and you've lost all of that weight and you've grown a company. And I was like, no. I had £1,000 in the bank. And yeah, it was like just he totally got the wrong end of the stick. And yeah, yeah, I think how did I make the shift? It's a tough one because I get it. It's like that's the bit as well that stops people because it's fear and it's and it's ultimately what the name of my company became. My company is called MadeBrave, and that first step takes bravery, right? It's like this world belongs to the brave, and bravery for each and every one of us, it feels different, right? For someone listening to this, bravery might be getting out their bed this morning and getting past something that's in their mind and going to work. Bravery for someone else might be jumping out an airplane and filming that and doing an adrenaline stunt. And I think if you can think about that in your brain, bravery means something to each and every one, and it's dialed up in each and every one of us differently. And all I could say is I've always tried to inspire creativity, bravery in everyone. And, I say everywhere I go, if I do my job today, if you're listening to this, hopefully I've inspired one notch on your bravery scale. And I think that's what you've got to do to push out your comfort zone, is you've just got to turn the notch once and you'll be amazed at what it can bring you.
Throughout that time, I'm sure there were a ton of really hard, challenging moments, right? Where maybe you questioned, is this the right choice? Am I doing the correct thing here for my family? So looking back, what was your toughest underdog moment, and when you questioned everything, and how did you push through that?
Oh, dude, how long have you got? How long? It's honestly, it never goes away, and that's the thing to realize, that it's a constant thing. And but here's the thing, right? Is that everyone has imposter syndrome. And I've constantly got it. I've got it sitting here today. I'm like, why do anyone want to hear from me? And it's constant. And I think the sooner, again, you get your head around that, is that everyone's making it up. Everyone is making it up. And, so yeah, I get stuff wrong constantly. Constantly I've done stuff wrong, but I always have the right intention. And I think that's why finding and figuring out your values is important. And you hear this, right? You hear entrepreneurs fail fast and fail and get stuff wrong, and it's like there's a Silicon Valley thing that's constantly said you got to fail and thing. But I think let's not concentrate on failing, right? Because we don't want to fuck up, and we don't want to lose money, and we don't want to hurt people, and we don't want to get things wrong. And realistically, when you do get things wrong in business, that's what happens. People get hurt, people lose jobs, so but get to know yourself, figure out and use your values to guide your decisions. And then even when you do get things wrong, and as I say, I do, I've overhired too early, I've done things wrong, and that's impacted real people and real families. But the one thing I always do know is that my heart is always in the right place when I try and do those things, because I'm trying to do it, and and I've always tried to focus on building a good culture and a good team and these things. And so make sure you pinpointed in what your intention is. And if your intention is only making money, this is why you need to figure out that other thing, because it's going to help guide these bad decisions or wrong decisions when you come across them.
It comes down to that even simple thing of cognitive reframing, right? Yes, fail fast, fail forward, but you're still also focusing on the failure. Yes, it's going to happen, but could we learn forward, right? Learn quickly. It's just more of that cognitive reframing. It's less negative, more positive. But yeah, that's also, do we have time for another, hour-long conversation? But you touched on imposter syndrome. So I just want to go there for a second, because obviously it's really huge right now. But obviously you felt it, you still constantly feel it. I even feel it. I think we all do. But mentally, how have you gone about navigating that imposter syndrome? Is it once again just do it, just put yourself out there? Is it, honing in on those core values? Like, how can people that are listening today that are younger in their career, have not maybe started, go about working through imposter syndrome?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and it's a fair one, because it's like, how do you help someone get past it in an actionable way? And I think it is, don't be afraid to ask questions in any scenario. So I'm in lots of meetings with lots of different industries and lots of experts that are super intelligent, way more intelligent about their subject than I ever will be. And I often feel intimidated. Oh my God, how am I in this room with this person? Or how am I sitting in conversation with this person? They're going to think I'm a fraud. I don't know enough about them. But again, it's back to being yourself and being comfortable to say, this is who I am. This is what I'm good at. And it's not being afraid to ask questions that sound silly, because they don't sound silly. So when someone uses when they shorten a word,
Like abbreviate
something, right? Most people just nod as if they're meant to know, and they know what it is, and they'd be stupid if they ask. I say, I'm really sorry, could you tell me, what did that mean? What was that you said? And you only need to ask that question once, and then we're all on the same page, and you're going to get a better conversation. But most people sit with imposter syndrome, saying, I should know it, so if I ask it, people are going to think I'm stupid. They're not. They're going to think you're actually emotionally intelligent, because you've been emotionally intelligent enough to ask it. And guess what? When they tell it, you now understand it, and you don't have imposter syndrome anymore.
Thank you for that. That's very actionable. And I think often at times, especially in the corporate world, you see that, right? People use, the sort of 3-letter acronyms to
acronyms. That was the word. That's what we were looking for. Abbreviations, acronyms, one of the two.
Yeah, but then they don't ask the question. And then, yes, okay, at times you can go out and Google it, sure. But if in that moment, especially if you're younger in your career, ask, right? Because then it shows you're willing to engage in a conversation, you're willing to learn, step out of your comfort zone, and actually, put yourself out there to grow your knowledge within the organization. One thing I want to ask for the younger generation today is, you've been in both, right? Freelance and corporate roles. So for young professionals, is it better to start in a corporate setting, or sort of to go out and just forge your own path?
So the truthful answer is, there is no right answer here. And the answer relies on each and every individual, because all of our hearts and minds are different. And for some people, working in another company where someone leads and someone directs and someone gives you a safety system around you is the right thing. For others, they don't work in that, and a freelancer is the right thing, and having a skill set and being able to sell it is the right thing for them. And for others, it's building something and leading something. And the trick is that there is no right answer. There's only a right answer for you. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise, because I think it's the pressure and it's the feeling we all need to be entrepreneurs. Absolutely not. Entrepreneurs is stressful as hell, and that's not for everyone's mindset. My brother, he's never worked for anybody in his life. He's only ever been entrepreneurial, and that's worked perfectly for his brain. I've worked in a job, and I got lots of value learning there. I also worked as a phone salesman, and I got loads of value there. And I took some of that learning into my business, and I started my business at 30 years old. So there's no right time, there's no right moment. It's the right time for the person and the story that you're in.
I think people get caught up in it, right? It's sort of this, what is that saying? Comparison is the thief of joy. And I think oftentimes people get consumed in that, right? They might be somebody who works in an organization. The organization is spectacular. Then they look outside because they think the grass is greener on the other side. But it's be okay with where you are, right? Because you can make a success of yourself within any industry. You just have to apply yourself, but do what ultimately works for you and know thyself, which goes back to sort of your, leveraging ChatGPT to do sort of those personal analysis of yourself. But throughout our careers, there's always moments of failure, right? We've spoken about that a lot today as well. But was there a specific failure early on that felt like devastating at the time, but later you were able to look back in hindsight and see that it was actually a learning moment?
Yeah, I think when you start to get some sort of success or traction or momentum around an idea or a business that you've had. Ultimately, a business is just an idea that started in your head, but you've managed to persuade people that it's something, right? Because it's just a made up thing. And that we've a story we've told ourselves. You get lots of people coming to you, and lots of people then have ideas and want you to do things with you. And I think for me, early on, I'm like a magpie. I was too easy to say yes to every shiny thing that came in front of me. And I think that ended up with me spreading myself too thin, overwhelming myself, not narrowing my focus enough on, and it probably then, or it definitely impacted my business. So I think, I thought that was good to try and do everything, look outwardly really ambitious and motivated, but actually, the lesson I've had is more, the more narrow you can be, the better. And it's also, my ego used to play a bit to the more people you have in your team, the more successful you are. But I've started to change my direction there in terms of what's the biggest impact I can have with the least amount of people in my team, with the biggest value add, is a better place to place your direction and energy. Because with lots of people come lots of variables and lots of hopes, needs, wants, and desires. And the more variables you have in a business, the harder that business is to run.
Also, for the listeners today, just because it's fascinating, you've been on both sides of the spectrum, but you've done hiring for both sides, right? Sort of corporate, freelance. You've been hired, you've done some hiring yourself. Like, what should newcomers know as they begin their careers when they start to go into that hiring process?
Attitude trumps everything. That if you can turn up at an interview with bundles of energy and enthusiasm pointed in the right direction of that company and really know what they're all about, people will oversee experience and anything else, because you can teach passionate people lots of stuff much easier than you can, less passionate. The other thing I would say is, what is kind of like your and then, or the thing that you add to your core skill. So I talk a lot about T-shaped people. So if you imagine, right, if I'm hiring for a graphic designer, I'm just using that as an example job, I'll get 100 applications from 100 ambitious people, right, that all have the passion that I've talked about a second ago. And if you've got some sort of, so graphic design's your deep knowledge, what have you got at the either side of that T that adds to that? So are you a graphic designer that knows loads about AI and also know loads about business? You've now made yourself much more attractive to hiring than the other 99 graphic designers. So, and it's kind of back to where we started today, is that constant learning and constant adding skills to your bow. It might be that you're a graphic designer with great storytelling skills, or great business negotiation, but find an and then for whatever you're trying to do. And everyone's is different, but try and, it might be that you're a funny person, right? And so I'm a graphic designer, I'm good at comedy. Well, that's got a value in my business. You'll find it, but look for your T-shape.
That's great that you touch on that, because I was having a prior conversation with another person that owns a marketing agency, and they were talking about, be something else prior to being a marketer. And I found it very fascinating, because if you start as a marketer first, you're only just going to perform. But if you are, specialized in AI, then you become a marketer, or you're a storyteller, then you become a marketer. It's fascinating because you bring a different perspective to that job role versus just doing that role, right? Like even you were talking about where you have that skill set of a graphic designer, but then you understand AI, and then you have humor. Like that in and of itself is so majorly impactful, because that humor could relate to the design, the AI could help the processes. So it's fascinating how you see some of these commonalities over conversations, but it's great for people to know that, because a lot of times, they're on the other side. They don't get to see or hear your perspective, especially in this day when there's a high volume of applicants. It's you can't give feedback to everybody, right? Especially when there's like 300, 400, 500 people applying to a role, it can become overwhelming on the other side. But if you, specifically you, were starting out again, what skill or trait would you develop to make yourself stand out from day one?
I think more than a skill, I would just say to myself that you're more talented than you think you are. And I think that that's when you're young, you think everyone else is something you don't. And I think to say to my younger version of myself, take a risk and know that you're more talented than you think you are early on. And then, you know, you touched on something earlier on, and I put a quote on LinkedIn yesterday, and it's a Henry Ford quote. He says, "Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right." And I think it's so powerful is that whichever one you choose, you are right. And if you think you can't and you're not going to be able to do anything and you're not going to succeed, guess what? That's what's happening. So get your mind into what you're trying to do, where you're trying to go, and what you want to achieve, and work towards it.
That's brilliant. Yes, because I think often at times there's people of the younger generation, and I'm sure we were in the same place as well, right? But I'll speak for myself here. When you are younger and you're starting out, you look at age as something that separates you, right? Especially with an experience. This person must be more knowledgeable just because they're older. They have more life experience. Even just when you look at personal branding, what do I have to talk about? I'm young, right? But there is so much. Your perspective is unique. You're a different generation. You're learning different things. And I think you're correct. People need to have a profound confidence within themselves because they ultimately have a different perspective. They bring something else to the table, and they can far supersede a person that is of an older age with their own individual knowledge. So then when we look at personal branding, I kind of want to go back there for a second. You know, you've gone from speaking engagements, and we look at your social media presence as entertaining dad. Like there's so many different varieties within yourself and what you do with that creativity. But for those that are starting out, personal branding is becoming a very big thing, right? Especially on multiple different platforms. We're seeing some transition away from brands to personal branding. How did you approach building a personal brand that complements rather than overshadows your company's brand?
It is a hard balance to find when you own a company, because a lot of that people see you in it, and you know, often what might make a company succeed is the spark that you've put into it as the founder, because that's often what's seeded it. So you know, I think, you know, when we were chatting earlier on and we, you know, chatted about values and things, it's, you know, there will be overlap with your company because you're the person that created it. So, but it's ultimately trying to figure out those extra layers that will sort of probably appear more in your personal brand than they will in the company one. And yeah, there's different ways you get there. Like you touched there on entertaining dad. So it's quite a different thing than obviously my LinkedIn for MadeBrave, because that's got MadeBrave weaved into it and everything else that I need to, because I need to get leads and I need to get business there. Entertaining Dad was started as a creative outlet for me during the pandemic. It was a plaything for me and my son, and it was just a space for me to put my passion of creativity into the world. And so again, for people, think about like, what passion, what hobby have you got? And if you, again, this might be another way to start, is just do something you love. And what happened with us is we were just playing, and then one day, and you can kind of see out the back here, there's a frame here, and Finn, my son, he did a trick off this bar and flipped on the trampoline, which is in the ground there, and did a trick. And I looked at it and said, Finn, let me put that in reverse, because I think that's going to look really cool in reverse. And I looked at it and I went, Finn, that is going to go so viral. And so I put it on the page, and it got 14 million views. And that was the first video that caught wind on Entertaining Dad. And I looked in the comments, and every comment said, he's like a tiny Spider-Man, or they would say, it's in reverse, or it's not in reverse. So they'd be fighting about that. Or they would say, never let them know your next move, which was a trend. Now, a great actionable trick for anyone who makes content is the answer to your next viral video is in the comments. Get in those comments, look for insights, and then redo it again. And so I said, Finn, put the Spider-Man outfit on. Let's rename it, never let them know your next move. Let's do the same thing. And it got 72 million views on our Instagram page.
Wow. So you even took it from one platform to a new platform, and it went viral.
Yeah, and still in TikTok it got however many, I can't remember, however many million, right? But what happened there was I think became about the 8th most watched reel in the world that year. And then I said to Finn, here's the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go in and answer every single comment on this feed with a question. We're going to compliment people and give them a question because that's going to create conversation, create more momentum. And then we've got a very narrow moment in time to figure out what kind of content we want to do on this page, right? And so we started testing, trying this, trying that. And ultimately we realized that human beings like human beings and they loved the father-son relationship. That then sent us on a journey to create this it became a father-son page and actually just became a page where I could create great memories with him. I could show off creativity. I could teach him creativity. And lo and behold, as soon as we got some attraction, we got brands coming to us. We got a camera company said we would like to sponsor you. And then next thing, we had Will Smith recreating one of our videos and then reacting to one of our videos and recreating one of our videos, right? And so that all starts with something and putting your good energy into the world. So everyone in this call, or this call, well, I'm going to call with you, but I'm going to podcast with everyone else. If I'm in your ears right now, you've got something in you that you bring to the world. Just put it out. Just get going, and it will turn. If you just put the energy, the effort, and they have good intent, it turns into something.
That's almost really unreal. Like, I love how you guys just turned something that was so passionate just for you guys having fun into this viral element. And I think it's exceptional because what you touched on earlier is very profound, right? You realize human beings love human beings. And I think that's really at the core of it all, right? You're sharing your experiences and your moments that you enjoy with your loved ones, with other people. And people love that. It resonates so well. And then I know we've gone through a lot and you've shared a ton of advice. But as we go to round out, right? Think back to like when you were in college, right? Or university. If you could give one piece of career advice to your college age self, what would it be?
Yeah, you are your unique selling point. Each and every one of you. You are your own USP. Figure that out and then just back yourself.
I like that. That's incredible. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for spending your time with us. It's been very exceptional.
Thank you for having me, Wade. It's been enjoyable.